Thank you all for joining us. We'll get started in just a minute, but enjoy your music as you come in.
Come here, buddy. Come on. Here, come on.
Dad, would you mind helping me with something? I told you I did all of those equations in my
Good evening for those of you who are already on, and I know a few more are joining. I'm Mimi Brodsky-Kress. I am the parent of a BBYO alum and a member of the BBYO Wellness and Inclusion Council. And as the parent of two young adults who have struggled with their own mental health, I know all too well difficulties that teens face, and especially living through a pandemic. So BBYO is committed to providing a mentally, emotionally, socially, and physically safe environment for our teens. And we want to be able to provide them with some of the tools they'll need to help navigate their challenges. Last year, the Wellness and Inclusion Council had several very successful online events designed for parents to help them, as we said, put the masks on first, which is a phrase we all hear on the airplane, reminding us that as adults, we need to be safe and take care of ourselves in order to take care of our children. So while we've been reading about some of the skyrocketing mental health challenges with our teens throughout the pandemic, let's all face it, adults are seriously affected also. And all of the worries and fears influence our teen sleep, our sleep, and the healthy sleep habits that are really important for all of us and our mental well-being. And the BBYO Center for Adolescent Wellness, we are very fortunate to have a noted child wellness expert, Drew Fiddler, as our director. And she has committed a great deal of her time while working with BBYO to making sure that all of our teens can thrive. And I want to welcome all of you to this evening's conversation and welcome Drew as she will lead the discussion with Dr. Erica Bocknek and Hilary Jackendoff as we talk about the connection between sleep and health.
Thank you so much, Mimi. I am thrilled to be with you all tonight. Very excited to be diving into this topic. I don't know about you all, but I could use more sleep in my life as a parent and just for so many other reasons. And my toddler could use more sleep too, which I would imagine so could all of your teens. So I am thrilled to be joined tonight by Dr. Erica Bocknek and Hilary Jackendoff. Dr. Bocknek is the principal investigator of the FAM Lab, and an assistant professor of educational psychology at Wayne State University. She studies social emotional development in young children in the context of parenting and family relationships. And her research and clinical practice emphasize mental health and well-being promotion by highlighting routines, rituals, and strategies that strengthen family bonds. And Dr. Bocknek currently serves as associate editor of the Infant Mental Health Journal. And Hilary Jackendoff is an ashram-trained, Los Angeles-based meditation and yoga Nidra teacher. Hilary aims to demystify ancient wisdom and make it more accessible, practical, and fun. And the spiritual doesn't have to be serious. I love that. So I am thrilled to be joined by you both, and very excited to get to have a conversation with you both tonight about our teens, sleep, our sleep habits, and just would love to, open the floor to let you start, tell us a little bit about you, your work, what interested you in this topic, and why do you think it is so important for us to be talking about sleep? Don't both jump at once. Hilary, go ahead.
We're trying to be gracious. I'm happy to start. So my personal interest in the topics of sleep and rest and sleep hygiene stemmed from my own kind of lifelong struggle with insomnia. So, from early childhood through always, sleep has always been a challenge for me. So I've focused a lot of my practice on supporting people in creating healthy sleep habits, as well as sharing the meditative practice of yoga nidra, which sort of it translates to yogic sleep, and it helps you sort of learn what it actually feels like to let go on a physical, mental, and emotional level. So it actually kind of trains your body and your brain to sleep more deeply and to feel at ease in that process of going to sleep. So yeah, I definitely got involved in this sort of space because it was so deeply personal for me. And I'm a 9 hours a night or bust kind of gal now. It is non-negotiable for me, at least until I have a child, so.
I think once you start, right, with the 9 hours, you're like, this is what I need. It just can't shift it.
Essential.
Erica, what about you?
I love hearing that history. And it's funny, actually, that we're here together, because in some ways I feel like it's the opposite for me. I am like, I've always been, even as a child, like a sleep super fan. I could sleep anywhere, and I like to sleep as much as I can get in a night. And I have been known to take the occasional nap as well. But the reason I really came to this from a mental health perspective, I've been a family therapist for almost 17 years, and I'm a scientist and a researcher. And the research evidence is extraordinarily compelling that as we're watching mental health issues click up over the years and decades, especially in our adolescent population, but for the US population as a whole, one of the main culprits that research is increasingly connecting to this increasing mental health crisis is the lack of sleep we're all getting, and kind of the way we treat sleep as an afterthought and as a luxury. And so as I started learning about this and researching it myself, I really have just been sort of on a soapbox about how important this is. And when I have clients come in to see me for mental health issues, in the very first session, I just say, there's only so far we're going to get together working on behavioral strategies if you can't get your sleep in check, if you're not drinking enough water, if you're not exercising. Those things are so core to mental health and wellness that anything else that we try to do layered on top can never be as effective.
So tell us a little more about, that piece about, what is the connection between development, whether that's adolescent brain development, right? But the development and sleep aspect, right? Where do those two sort of come into contact?
Sure. So I think very briefly, sleep is as necessary for human functioning as these other things that I mentioned, water and good nutrition. And sleep is so essential that sometimes the way we treat it, that we can just make it up later or get it back. It's the same thing if you ever got seriously dehydrated. Having a glass of water the next day never seems to cut it. Sleep is the time during the day when a lot of our learning gets consolidated and sort of integrated into who we're becoming and who we're developing into and who we're growing into. And it's key at all developmental stages, actually. By the way, development doesn't end at age 18. Development is actually a lifelong phenomenon. We're always growing and evolving. Our body is always changing. The core of who we are, our personality, is always growing and expanding. So sleep is always essential for all developmental processes to be supported. Adolescence is, of course, a really interesting and important time period that earlier in human history actually used to be a short burst, and it's kind of lengthened over time in response to changes in society, et cetera, requirements we've placed on that time period. But the reason that's important to know is because a lot of what we know about adolescence, a lot of the stuff that kind of rubs us as parents, there's huge bursts in impulsivity and sexuality and risk-taking behaviors. It's because at one point in human history, there was this short burst of those behaviors so that we could procreate and colonize and move the species forward. And now we've turned it into a period of time where we want people to discover who they are and make big, important life choices. And so teenagers have a lot resting on their shoulders to sort of self-determine, while their bodies are doing all of this really exciting bursting and compelling them to go forth in the world and take it on. And because sleep is so crucial for self-regulation and for helping developmental processes to take root, and given all the exciting stuff going on during the period of adolescence, perhaps sleep is never more important than in that time period.
Wow. And I mean, Hilary, we joked a little bit about, needing that 9 hours and really wanting that piece, but, how much sleep do teens need? How much sleep do adults need? Is there a total number we should be getting, or what's the goal here?
There is definitely a target number to hit. For adults, it's about 7 to 9 hours. And for teens, it's between 8 and 10. Which is pretty tough for a lot of teens to actually attain that 8 to 10 hours of sleep, because teens, naturally, their circadian rhythms are different to adults, because there's this sort of individuation process that has to happen biologically, whereby their bodies need to stay up later than their parents. So, your teen that's staying up till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, that's biological. That is them learning to separate from the tribe effectively and learn how to be an adult, to learn how to be on their own, right? So that's really important. But that individuation process, combined with an early start to school, it leaves most teens getting they're very, very underslept, which of course then contributes to moodiness and, poor decision-making and a lack of emotional integration, challenges with focus, challenges with learning new information, all of the things that Erica mentioned that are happening on a developmental level in the brain for teens. They all come back to sleep. They all come back to the non-REM sleep that is, teens are getting so much more non-REM sleep than adults. They're sleeping so much deeper, totally different level of sleep than most adults experience, because there's so much happening on a neurological level in the brain. So it's a real conundrum to navigate sort of that different circadian rhythm and the importance of sleep for your teen.
And so, I
Challenging.
mean, sounds like it's sort of right. You're fighting an uphill battle to begin with,
Yeah.
and then you add in everything happening in the world,
Mhm.
not to mention phones, computers, laptops, devices, right? The trauma, the flood of information, the time to catch up with friends, to watch TV, to disconnect, which actually teens need, right? You need that disconnection and that connection. So, how does all of that also play into their ability to sleep, to recharge, and for the brain to get what it needs, right? In those moments or in that time of rest.
So I might just jump in with a couple of thoughts about that. One is that I think I hear you saying a couple of things. One is that screen time is often used as a way to kind of disconnect and rest. But the thing about blue light exposure, and it's really any frequency of light that's not red light. And just as a quick side story, several years ago, I was a fellow at University of Michigan's medical school, and there was all this research coming out about the effects of blue light on health and well-being and mental health, so much so that all the psychiatry faculty were installing red light bulbs in their like bathrooms and master bedrooms, because it was really compelling stuff about the effect that all this light exposure is having on our development and on our health. And I haven't gone that far in my home, but my kids do have red light night lights in their room, and I do really think it's important. And I think one of the biggest problems around this issue with blue light is screen usage. And so all the best evidence I've read is that screens should really go off at least an hour or two before you intend to rest your mind and your body and go to sleep. And that's not just about the stimulation of what it is you're reading or responding to, which I think is a whole other set of things, but the light exposure itself is inhibiting healthy sleep cycles, and that's the mediator between blue light and poor health outcomes is like a dysregulated sleep cycle. So I think there should be no screens in the bedrooms. I think that if there needs to be like a clear shut off at least an hour or two before bedtime. But this thing about sort of coming down and kind of disconnecting, I really like to see people engage in decompression strategies at the end of the day that are relational in some degree, whether that's talking with somebody in your home and having a loving conversation, playing a board game, reading books together, doing something that's interactive and involves your mind and your heart. That can go a long way to restful sleep in the evening. But I really want to hear too from the yoga expert, because I imagine there's a whole other sort of like set of things I don't know about that maybe kind of fit into this puzzle.
I mean, I'm right there with you with the blue light. It's oh my gosh, the preventing the release of melatonin. It's like, it does not support healthy sleep. And it is the one thing that most teens and most adults are, I don't want to say doing wrong, but it's one of the most important habits to look at, to shift. I think with sort of like a winding down strategy, it's, sleep is a letting go, essentially, right? It's a letting go of the day. It's a letting go of the thinking mind. It's a letting go of activity in the body, right? In terms of like, engaging with the world. It's this sleep in a lot of ways is like meditation, right? It's a turning inward. And I could say a lot about like sort of the modern meditation culture and kind of how like we expect ourselves to just sit down on a cushion or in a chair and just drop into this blissful state of peace. In reality, it doesn't work like that. In order to turn inward, whether it's for meditation or whether it's for sleep, there has to be sort of a letting go process that you initiate, whereby you consciously engage in strategies to unwind tension from your body, to release the tension from the day on a physical level, to release the tension from the mind, to sort of come into a feeling of like emotional neutrality, right? And bring yourself, and be able to bring yourself into a peaceful place whereby you're ready for sleep on all levels. Because just lying down in bed, okay, sure, you leave your phone out of the bedroom, but just lying down in bed and expecting your body to initiate the process of sleep without having some routines in place, without having some, even sleep hygiene routines, right? It's a big ask. And so a lot of us have serious challenges with sleep, both teens and adults, because there's a lot going on in the world, and we are navigating hyperstimulated nervous systems with the amount of information that we're taking in through our devices. And teens, the amount of new information that they're taking in just about the world and about themselves and about their social relationships. It's so much to process, and to just expect yourself to lie down and drop into sleep, it doesn't work like that. It's a big ask. So that's what I would add. Obviously I can chime in with specifics as well. I just saw a question pop up in the chat.
Yeah, and I think actually just I'll read that one in just a second, but what are some real tools, I think, as parents are looking at this? You talked about sleep hygiene, Hilary, and just as we're thinking about those sleep habits for our teens, what is good sleep hygiene for our teens? What is some easy sleep habits that really we can adapt and be able to utilize for our teens, or help them as they're trying to establish some of those habits?
So I was really responding so much to what Hilary was saying about how you can't just like lay in your bed and like poof, go to sleep, and that there are ways to invest in routines and strategies that you build into ritual that help you really go to sleep. And I want to hear more about that too. I would love to hear more specifics about that. I wanted to just for a moment highlight it though, and also respond to this parent, that sometimes when we hear that something is biological, like the fact that sleep rhythms naturally shift forward in adolescence, as Hilary was speaking to, we think that that's like, you just can't fight City Hall, it's biological, the body will do what it's going to do. And I just want to make sure that we start with an understanding of sort of how behavior works, that even if something has a really strong biological connection, nothing is ever nature or nurture. Everything about us, even down to our eye color, which is, I know, hard to believe, every one of our traits, every behavioral choice, every part of who we are, is a really interesting interaction between nature and nurture. And what that means is that if you are biologically predisposed, for example, to not feel sleepy on your own until 1 a.m, that doesn't mean that you're beholden to never go to sleep before 1 a.m. It means that you have to do some intentional things to develop new habits and retrain your own natural rhythms to adopt a healthier sleep schedule. One very concrete thing that parents can do, although it's not a super fun thing you can do, but one thing you can do is that everybody, teenagers, parents, young children at all ages, people need to have a regular bedtime. And unfortunately, your bedtime during the week needs to be relatively similar to what your I think Brian and I are on exactly the same wavelength. Your bedtime during the week needs to be relatively similar to what your bedtime is on the weekend, and your wake up time during the week has to be relatively similar to what your wake up time is on the weekend. And that is one way that you'll get your body to develop the right habits around sleep. You just can't stay up until 1 a.m, wake up at 6 a.m. during the week, have that sleep deficit and make it all up on the weekend. It doesn't contribute to good health. And we know that it's connected to escalating rates of depression and anxiety.
So Hilary, other thoughts on, those good sleep habits for teens, or how we help them to develop some of those habits?
Absolutely. Erica, 100% agree with that. The importance of that regularity in bedtime and wake time, it is essential. So in terms of specifics for sleep hygiene for a bedtime routine, one thing that I would definitely encourage is making sure that your teen takes a shower at night before sleep, because in order to release melatonin and initiate the sleep process, the core body temperature needs to drop. So taking a warm shower before bed will actually raise the body temperature, and then that differentiation from getting out of the shower into ideally a cooler environment. Temperature is very, very, very important for sleep. So if you can, your house the temperature in your house ideally should be around 65 degrees at night, kind of throughout the year, which can get expensive depending on where you live. I know this. But if that's navigable, it's certainly worth it for the benefits that it will offer for your sleep cycle. So taking that hot shower before bed to help support lowering the core body temperature to initiate the release of melatonin, huge. Keeping the temperature in the house around that, they say between 60 and 67. It depends on personal preference, family preference for sure. And then making sure that the sleeping space, the bedroom, is dark, quite dark. That's also important. And on top of that, so those are sort of the environmental factors that are worth taking into account. On top of that, to support your teen in kind of letting go of the day, one thing that's been shown to be quite effective in sort of releasing rumination, right? It's preventing sort of obsessive thinking and analyzing and going over things and thinking about the future, et cetera. Psychologists have actually found that doing a brain dump is really effective. So writing down as detailed a list as possible, everything that is, on your mind. And the more detailed that you are, it actually initiates sleep faster. So that's one simple thing to kind of help clear the mind, right? And on a more physical level, when you're in bed, right, focusing on abdominal breathing, slow breathing, extending the exhalation to activate the parasympathetic nervous system response, right? Also, progressive muscle relaxation can be really helpful, tensing and releasing different parts of the body. And yoga nidra can also be really helpful to support. I typically recommend yoga nidra as a practice. It's kind of an adaptogen. You can practice it any time of the day and it will have benefits. A 20-minute yoga nidra, if you sort of drop into the practice and really let go, it mimics a full sleep cycle. So it can feel as though you slept 2 to 3 hours in a 20 to 40-minute practice. So that can help you feel quite rested if you're not sleeping deeply or you're not sleeping well. And I've worked with a lot of teen clients, and my husband also works with teens. And as a remedy for sort of not feeling rested during the day, and also a remedy for not being able to fall asleep at night, yoga nidra is an incredible practice.
And I think, you know, we received a lot of questions, and there are some questions in the chat also of that exact piece of like, how do we help our teens to start this process? How do we help them to, right, let go when we know that, you know, if it's coming from the parent, they may not be so willing to engage, to listen, to try these things, that, you know, sometimes we start to sound like the teacher in Charlie Brown because we've said it so many times about them getting sleep. And so, you know, especially, you know, I love what Alana put in the chat, you know, when they're talking about homework, dance, choir, BBYO, right? They're excelling in all these things. How can we, you know, start to make some headway there and really, you know, help our teens to have that tool or, you know, those practices?
I would say a couple of things. One is that I'm in that boat with you. My oldest, we were just joking the other day that he's at like a Jesse Spano level of activity right now. We got so excited when it was like, we felt like it was safe to go do all the activities again, that we did like all the activities. And we've had to really have a lot of conversations about how that's affecting health and life and well-being. You know, in some ways, my answers to these things are not easy, but if you have habits at this point in your child's life that you want to work backwards now and sort of unpack and redo, you absolutely need buy-in from your child. But you also need to set some rules, and it's hard to do if things have been going one way and now you're sort of walking it back. That's hard to do. It's ideal if these are kind of house rules all along, that these are the priorities that we have, and this is kind of the value we place on them. Having said that, the best way at this stage to kind of fight through this, and if you commit to better sleep practices, better sleep hygiene, bedtimes, making these kinds of changes, it won't happen overnight, and it won't be easy, and it will take work. But the best thing you can really do is commit as a whole family. And so it's clear, the message is clear, this is not punitive. It is a practice that as a family we're going to engage in together, because we have now been convinced that sleep needs to be a bigger priority in our lives than it was before. And it may mean that you have to make meaningful changes in schedule. It may mean that you have to make changes in, leisure time and screen usage and other kinds of things that are going to be really, really hard. Over time, I think you will find that new rhythms develop and new habits develop, and it will feel like a pattern that is more natural, but it will take a significant period of time to sustain.
Amazing. And, there's a couple of great questions in the chat about specific practices, that teens can relate to, or even, good resources for teens to start to develop some of, whether it's a yoga nidra practice, whether it's other sleep habits, are there real resources that we can pull on for our teens, or specific practices that they might relate to?
Yeah, I can. I have a number of meditations and yoga nidras specifically, as well as two that I'd really recommend that are sleep specific, as well as one for a daytime practice. And I can pop them in the chat. I have most of my audio content available for free on Insight Timer. So if you download that app, create a login, you can find my teacher profile, and then the tracks are just right there. Give me one moment and I will pop them into the chat. There's one, and that is my crown jewel of sleep meditations. I very much recommend it if there are any issues with sleep for parents, and of course for teens. And I will also share this one, which is more of a daytime practice, and it's just a 20-minute practice that is really simple. And Yoga Nidra is a beginner friendly meditation. So it's fully guided, and it's designed to sort of occupy the thinking mind in a sense, so that the thinking mind can quiet and recede. So it's in that regard a perfect practice for sleep. If your teen is practicing in the daytime with a recording, I recommend making sure that they have an alarm set, because if they are underslept, there's a solid chance that they could just totally pass out, especially if they're habituated to using it as a sleep meditation. But it works at all times of the day. It is a godsend. I cannot say enough about it. Well, I mean, I could talk for hours, but I will, I'll just curb my enthusiasm.
You don't need to. That's why we're here. So no, I love it. And I think it's great. And, as we look at this, is there a way to help with our teens' buy-in, right? We're talking about routines, schedules, the things our teens are programmed to fight against. We're talking about maybe even leaving computers and phones outside of the bedroom so they can charge at night. And for our teens, it's a big shift. So are there ways to help with buy-in from teens around this, that, it's not just, well, it's good for your health. Well, that's great that it's good for my health, but all of those things that come up. So are there ways that you would think about that buy-in piece for teens?
So I have a feeling that Hilary's going to have some good cop answers. I'm going to give the bad cop answers first, if that's okay, because that's what I do for a living. I think that an interesting dynamic, I think, that parents are really confronting during the teen years is you see your child really developing a lot of independence and an independent spirit, and you want to make room for them to exercise that sort of self-determination and sense of authority over their person and make good choices. And you really want to shift into a role as more of a coach than, kind of an authority figure. And I think working between those positions in this time period is really tough. And I want to really validate that. It's not just your perception. It is exactly the parenting developmental task of this time period, is to figure out when to set limits, when to give rules, and when to make space for the teen to make choices and kind of experience the consequences. Sleep is so important that, to me, it is an area to set rules in, as opposed to taking more of a wait and see approach. And it just isn't going to feel pretty at first for some kids. What I can say about that is, there's that saying people say, I'm not my kid's friend, I'm my kid's parent. And what I actually like to say is that I am my child's friend, and you should be your child's best friend. And in my life, the best friends I've had, in fact, my BBG friends are still my best friends. I just took a little girls' weekend with them. The best friends I've ever had in my life don't let me get away with stuff, and they don't let me harm myself in the interest of not wanting to make me mad or feeling like it's not their place, right? Like, people who really love me step in and say, this is not the right thing right now, and let's come up with a solution together. So it's all to say that at the end of the day, if you want to really make meaningful changes in this area, it's going to require a level of asserting authority. There will be some rules that need to be put in place. The parent has to lead and be consistent and be a good role model. But there are loving ways and respectful ways, I think, to deliver that information. And, Drew, as you said, leading with like, well, this is good for your health, that can be hard for teenagers to digest because they are in the moment and they are not sort of as aware of their own mortality as adults are. That is not a developmentally appropriate mindset for teenagers. They're leading with the amygdala, the part of the brain where experience is processed through emotion. They're not yet, this part of the brain's not lighting up yet, where your executive functioning is, your ability to make choices based on consequences. And so that's why they need parents to do that for them. That part of the brain doesn't work yet, but it needs to be scaffolded. It needs to be learned. And parents can role model that with love and by speaking to the back of the brain and getting the child eventually to come around to the front.
Hilary, any additional thoughts on that? And in particular, I think that teen that maybe pushes back a little bit on the rules or on those other pieces, a way that to engage them in a different way. And then would love to talk about, I love this piece on music in the chat and would want to, go there next, but.
I mean, honestly, I'm really feeling what Erica shared around setting those strong boundaries as much as possible around sleep and finding that way to lovingly communicate it so that it's received well, and modeling that behavior as parents, right? And being mindful of screen time, being mindful of, sort of implementing those routines to wind down as a family, perhaps. I think that even though the frontal lobe is not fully developed in teens, they can still hear, right? And understand rational thought, especially if they're well rested. So appealing to that understanding of what's actually happening neurologically for them, so that they could understand that the level of importance that sleep actually has for their cognitive development and for their emotional development and for their emotional integration. If that's possible for your teen, that is encouraging that intrinsic motivation is a very good strategy if that is received.
And helping them to achieve a really important skill at this point in time, which is that independence.
Yeah.
Some great questions in the chat about falling asleep to music, falling asleep to podcasts, and teens really that's a way that calms and relaxes them. Not classical music. I just want to be clear that it's not a spa sound or a calming sound, but just music or podcasts that teens find that as a way to disconnect. It's not light, it's not it's not hitting some of those things we were talking about before. Thoughts?
I'd love to hear what Hilary has to say about this. I have always okayed podcasts, music, anything without blue light. For me, that's really I want to draw like a clear line and not be too, I like to keep solutions for families as simple as I possibly can. So I've always said okay to those things. I think audio is better than the blue light emissions. I think if they're helping teenagers get on, and kids too, get on a good sleep schedule, that's ultimately the goal. But I'd be curious what you'd have to say about that.
I would agree, actually. And I mean, the hard and fast rules around phones in the bedroom get really confusing with questions like this, because the thinking mind is such an obstacle to sleep. And most adults struggle with navigating the thinking mind, and listening to music or listening to a podcast or a book on tape, or, well, it's not on tape anymore. Anyway,
Audible, right? That's
Audible.
What Audible's for.
Yeah.
I think that was like a free promotion of some kind. Who knows?
Yeah, but listening to something that takes you out of your thinking mind is a good thing for sleep, right? And I recommend people use sleep meditations if they're struggling to get into a good sleep rhythm. And sleep meditations are typically played on a phone or a device, right? So it's sort of figuring out whether your teen is using the phone, using the device in a mindful way, or whether they kind of lack that impulse control and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're still scrolling on TikTok. And if that's the case, that's a totally different conversation. And in those cases, I would say you might have to work with some different regulations around screens, because that lack of impulse control is real.
Yeah, and sort of two last questions, one of which is on alarms. So, and I think this is actually a fabulous question. If I could tell you the number of times my mother as a child would just throw a pillow from, when I was a teen, throw the pillow from the door because she was terrified to wake me up, right? She was so scared that she would, or what she would get when she woke me up as a teenager. But, how do we help our teens to wake up, to sort of do that on their own? Because alarms and nagging, just don't work sometimes. So how can we potentially set our teens up for better success in terms of their wake up and ownership over some of those skills?
I can start. I would say that if kids are really sleep deprived, they're going to be hard to wake up in the morning. So one of the ways that you encourage easier wake up times is with better bedtimes and more sleep and some of the other things that we've been talking about. The other thing that I would say is that if your kid's really hard to wake up in the morning, start waking them up earlier than when you really need them to be up, so that your anxiety, their anxiety is lower. Plan for it to take a while if it takes a while.
I would add to that as well and say that something like an alarm clock that changes color and creates natural daylight in the room, that's another helpful option. And there are also alarm clocks that wake you up at, and they're apps, right? They're on the phone. So again, tricky with these regulations, but they wake you up at the lightest point in your sleep cycle. So if you pick a certain range of waking times, say between 6:30 and 7:15, or whatever the time frame might be, the alarm clock is going to actually start to go off when it detects that you are in the lightest level of sleep. So in maybe, theta brainwaves, alpha brainwaves, as opposed to delta.
Interesting. I wonder how it knows that, how it sort of figures that piece out.
It tracks your movement like a creepy phone.
Yeah, it's always watching. So do you know the name of that app, Hilary, or any of those? I know there's the Hatch alarm clock that some people really like that does that gradual.
I'm on that. No, my voice, I did work for them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I just brought it up.
Yeah. I actually, the alarm clock that I've used, I'm sure there's a number of them on the market, but the app that I've used is called Sleep Cycle. And it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
And then one final question, that for teens who they're trying these things, they've put their phones in a different room, they're, but are still struggling, whether it's just letting go of the stress of the day, whether it's, they're just not able to really get that sleep or get themselves to that sleep place. Any other suggestions or recommendations for teens who really are struggling despite having put some of these, better sleep habits in place?
Yeah, I'm glad this question was raised, because most of tonight we've really talked about how to modify sleep sort of on the front end if the problem is that you're just not taking sleep seriously. But sleep also is where we see the problems of the day show up. And if you're finding that all these good habits are in place, but you're not sleeping through the night, you or your team are not sleeping through the night, not able to fall asleep, not feeling rested in the morning, the problem is likely further back. It may be that there's an anxiety problem, depression, some other thing going on, and you really might want to reach out for some additional support. I like to tell people that therapists are most effective with like medium-sized problems. You don't have to wait until you're in serious distress, the world is falling apart, before you reach out for mental health support. We love when people call us and say, I really just needed someone to talk to once a week and process what's going on in my life. We can be very helpful to people at that level. And so don't ever be shy about doing that. And that might be the best place to start. I also saw a question in the chat about if you're having kind of more persistent issues with your kid listening, taking rules seriously, et cetera, then how are you ever going to mount this challenge around sleep? And the answer is that you may not be able to. And so that might be another chance to reach out for some additional support so that you can invest in the relationship ahead of trying to tackle the sleep problem.
I would add to I think Lisa's comment on her daughter who is kind of doing all the right things. One thing that we didn't really highlight is the importance of exercise. Different people sort of have different energy levels naturally, right? We all know this. We know the people that go all day and the people that need multiple naps. But for those people that have sort of a natural excess of energy, that needs to be burned off, you know? So like, I'm sure either many of you have probably experienced this in early childhood, or you know people who parented this way and they just had to burn off their kids' energy and they would just run their kid around the block, right? And you just see the kid running laps. My neighbor is always running his son and he's like, he needs to burn off the energy. That continues. So for some teens, they're just not getting enough physical movement. They're just not getting to expend enough energy so that they get into bed at the end of the day, physically, energetically ready to sleep. So that's something to consider as well. And if that is not suitable, Lisa, for your daughter or for anyone else that's navigating a similar challenge, that's when I would say perfect time to introduce a sleep meditation practice, because having some support in navigating how to let go of the day and how to let go of the mind is tremendously helpful. And those are skills that can be learned. You know, we're not built knowing how to navigate that busy mind.
Amazing. So I mean, we have talked a little longer than maybe we intended to, but wanted to give us the opportunity tonight also to experience just a very brief yoga nidra meditation from Hilary. Hilary, I don't know if you can very briefly, I realized we jumped in, we were talking about yoga nidra. We never actually said what it is and how it might be different than your typical yoga or your typical meditations. I don't know if you can give us like the 60-second version on what yoga nidra is, and then we can do a very, very brief example for everyone. And then we'll wrap up for the evening.
Absolutely. So yoga nidra versus sort of traditional meditation. Yoga nidra is this very systematic guided practice that takes you through this very intentional process of internalization, letting go of the external world, usually through the senses or through the breath. There's a body scan component in the practice where you move your attention through the physical body, which builds a deeper connection to the body and strengthens the neural pathways in the brain. And it also helps you learn how to really be in your body and how to relax your body. So many of us struggle with that immensely. And the practice kind of idiot proofs it, for lack of a better expression. And then it sort of goes from there, progressing into different guidance that kind of takes you deeper and deeper. And I mentioned before that the practice can sort of mimic the sleep cycle. So normally in a seated mindfulness-based meditation practice, you're probably going to be spending most of your time in alpha brainwaves, maybe a little bit of theta, which is similar to the dream state, right? It's where our creativity is enhanced. In Yoga Nidra, you're typically moving through all of the brainwaves, maybe not gamma, but you're moving from the waking state through alpha, through theta, and often ending up in delta, and then maybe doing that 2 or 3 more times. So it's very, very restorative. And it's, as I said, totally idiot proof. People that have never meditated before can go deeper in a Yoga Nidra than people that have been meditating for 30 years. There's no barrier to entry, which is another sort of one of the miracles of this particular type of meditation. That was a little longer than 60 seconds, but I get excited. It's just, I want the entire world. I've been on this soapbox for Yoga Nidra since 2008. And I'm like, when will the whole world know? So anyway, I'm happy to guide a short practice, just like a 10-minute mini, tiny baby practice. So if you'd like to experience that just short version of the technique, I am happy to guide you, and thank you for being here. It's so wonderful.
So Hilary, thank you. I think what we'll do, if it's okay with you, Drew, is wrap up, and then let's invite those to stay who would like to be part of that 10-minute yoga practice. That way we can work through, if anybody is on a time crunch and those who want to be part of it. I will tell you, I myself am very resistant to yoga, and I will be staying because you've sold me. The idiot proof got me, and I am here for it. So really, we hope you'll stay and join us for this. But in the meantime, thank you both, Hilary and Erica. Nights like tonight are both about tangible things that we can take home, but also about community. And when I often ask my team what it is about BBYO that, is so appealing to him and that makes him feel, so passionate about it, it's the community. It's feeling around like-minded people, being around like-minded people and feeling supported. And when you look at the questions and you realize that you're not the only one struggling with this, and you're not the only one who knows they need to implement those rules, but also knows that those rules are just so hard with teens. And there's those around you that are feeling the same way. That in of itself is sometimes what parents need. And so once again, kudos to BBYO and their staff for just knowing teens and knowing the challenges of raising teens and being there not only to support us as parents, but to support our teens, because at the end of the day, our teens are really only as strong as we are. And if we can't pull ourselves together, very often it's reflected on our teens. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And, thank you to the Wellness and Inclusion Committee members that are here tonight. We will continue programming like this because it is just so vital in any time, but particularly in these challenging times. So thank you both, Hilary and Erica. And I really hope, most of you will stay and join us in this 10-minute yoga practice.
Thank you. And I'm happy to turn it back over to Hilary, and we'll dive in.
All right. So I want to be clear. We're not doing any yoga. We're lying down. Maybe I'd missed mentioning that part. Nidra in Sanskrit means sleep. So this is quite literally sleep yoga. which is why it's such a great.
I'm even more sold, Hilary.
Yeah. I wouldn't make you do stuff. Come on. I am a rest professional. It's meant to be an effortless practice. So, the less work you put in, the more you will get out of it, which is counterintuitive to what we typically understand about pretty much everything in life. But this practice is super powerful for helping to unwind narratives like that. So yeah, feel free to lie down. You can, of course, also practice from seated. It's just a little mini bite-sized practice. But if you're practicing from seated, either way, any way you slice it, you just want to be comfortable. And with any meditative practice, you'll get the most out of it if you'll get the most restful benefits out of it if you stay in stillness. So by practicing stillness, we actually give our body the chance to rest, right? Movement is not rest. So finding your comfortable position, whatever that might be, lying on the floor, the couch, the bed, or seated in a chair. And go ahead and come into your body consciously through your breath, breathing in fully and deeply through your nose, slow, gentle breath, and then breathe out through your mouth, long, slow sigh. Again, letting your exhale be longer than your inhale, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one more breath like this, letting your whole body soften as you exhale. And then let your natural breath emerge. So nothing to do, nothing to change. Just let your body breathe on its own. And start to notice the different points of contact between your body and whatever surface is beneath you or behind you. Whatever surface supports your body in this moment, just notice the different sensations of your body meeting the surface beneath. And then notice the sensation of your clothes touching your skin. The sensation of your upper lip touching your lower lip. Upper eyelids touching your lower eyelids. Just feel this. And feel into the sensation of breath in your nostrils. And as your breath flows, feel that each inhale, you're welcoming in a felt sense of calmness. Each exhale, letting go of the day. Each exhale, letting go of any tensions. And now preparing to move the attention around your body. Just feeling into different parts of your body as they're named and allowing each part to soften. And connecting mind to body by repeating the name of each part. mentally. Feeling into the right hand and allowing it to soften. Mentally repeating right hand. Lower arm. Upper arm. Right shoulder. Right side of the chest. Right side of the waist. The right hip. Upper leg. Lower leg. Foot. And awareness of the whole right side of the body, allowing it to soften completely. And shifting attention to the left side, awareness to the left hand, lower arm, upper arm, shoulder, left side of the chest, left side of the waist, hip, upper leg, lower leg, left foot, whole left side of the body. The whole left side of the body. And then shift attention to the natural breath once again. Without changing the breath, just observe it, coming and going, gently moving through the body. And as the breath flows, focus the mind by counting each breath as it passes. Counting backwards from the number 18 down towards 0. Breathing in, 18. Breathing out, 18. Breathing in, 17. And so on. Let go of the count. And just allow yourself to simply be. Letting yourself connect to a felt sense of tranquility, a felt sense of ease within your own body. And as you move back into your evening, see if you can carry this feeling with you. Begin to open your awareness of the space around you, welcoming back in sounds. Noticing sensations and starting to deepen your breath once again. And as you're ready, start to introduce movement. Noticing how this very short meditation practice felt in body and mind. And acknowledging mentally that each time you practice any kind of meditation, your experience will be different. Letting go of the outcome, letting go of any goals is essential. And that, my friends, is it. That was a bite-sized practice. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions about it. Feel free to let me know if you'd like additional resources. Feel free to reach out anytime, email, social media. I am all over the internet. And thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Hilary, again. Thank you, Erica, again, for your time, for that practice. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. We know that none of this is simple fixes, but hope that you've learned some more tools for your toolkit, and look forward to our next time learning together. So thank you all and have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.